Hello Canada, welcome back to another edition of the Canadian Citizen Journal. I'm your host, alias Tagay. Well, I was going to do a combination of Alberta and Saskatchewan and where we're kind of lying on within the provinces in this whole secession, separation, and independence. But there's so much going on right now with both of these provinces, I'm going to have to do 2 episodes. So I'm going to dedicate this one to Alberta. And then in another hour, I should have the other one finished and put out on Saskatchewan. Now, I want to shoot out a thank you to the Lavine Show. This is another independent who, of course, like myself, needs likes, shares, and subscribes. He actually had recorded this open talk that happened in Bonneville, which I'm going to be showing you today and breaking down just a little wee bit of it. And again, as always, I post everything in my links. I don't BS. I started this channel to give you just the facts. Just the facts. Sorry, not sorry. Now, we're going to start off with just some questions from the presser that Danielle Smith gave, because she dropped a great, she's going to reduce the cap. She's not going to allow it to go any further on emissions, which is great news to businesses. But is also that whole got the horns out against Ottawa and how they're trying to shut the West down, this control. Now, before I get right into this, everybody's got this. There's a lot of people that have been sharing this little wee clip. They've kind of taken a little excerpt of just the quote on what Trump had said, praising Mark Carney and this deal that's going to be coming out in the next few days. Obviously, they don't post their links. Everybody's copying it off of the same person who actually cut the clip out, and I'm not like that. Now, I've had this saved. I've known about this. It actually came out the day after Trump and Carney had met. With all of the different news that was going around, I was hoping that I could find out what he meant by what he said. And so far, there's a few hints, which we will get to on the next episode. So stay tuned. Make sure you hit like, share, and subscribe. And if you are, punch that notification bell so you don't miss the next episode, which I'll be showing this on, and then diving into where Saskatchewan is at and the NDP. I'm like, this party, Saskatchewan, get it together, man. You gotta vote these people out. They're actually trying to remove. They want to first. They want to either put more people in, so make it a higher percentage of people, to stop any democracy, to actually stop any citizen-initiated referendum. And at first, they were trying to pass a bill. This was like 5 days ago, where they were going to make it so that it was illegal to vote against independence. Like, what are these people are just anything to be socialist or fascist. It just drives me absolutely nuts. But anyways, that'll be next episode. Like I said, I should have it rolling out about an hour after this one here hits the airwaves. So without further ado, let's start with Danielle Smith, greatest premier in Canada.
Heard from industry is that any further increases to the industrial carbon tax past $100 per ton would be detrimental to their businesses and would diminish their competitiveness in the market. That's why today we're announcing that effective immediately, Alberta is freezing the industrial carbon tax under Alberta's Technology and Innovation Emissions Reduction System, or TIER, at $95 per ton of emissions. This price was set to increase to $110 per ton next year and continue increasing to $170 per ton by 2030. Now, let me be clear, Alberta remains committed to reducing emissions through the development and implementation of new technologies, not unrealistically high taxes, while responsibly powering the world for decades to come. Alberta's industrial carbon tax system, TIER, has been in place since 2007. Our approach has reduced emissions in intensity by over 22% and reduced overall emissions by an estimated 7.2%, while production increased by 90%. We have a reasonable system in place that's working, but any additional increases past $100 per ton will wipe out any of the benefits we've seen. That means fewer jobs for Albertans, less revenue to invest in our public services, and decreased innovation across our industries. But instead of supporting our industry, Ottawa wants to increase their industrial carbon tax to $170 per ton by 2030. Now, if industry told us...
Now, she's absolutely correct. She dives more into this in this next clip that, well, not next. I want to finish off this presser. I got it up 2 more clips from here, but there's a independent named Lavine who was actually there and recorded this get together. So a shout out to Lavine. We're gonna skip a little wee bit further ahead. Just listen to how media, wow, mainstream these people are.
For the Premier, we've heard you talked earlier today about economic stability and relief. I've heard from some economists who say that any plan for Alberta to separate from Canada is not economically viable, and they fear that investment would flee from this province as a result of that instability. I know you said that your government is not putting forward this referendum yourself, but you are leaving the door open. So are you risking economic stability by doing so?
Well,
now, do you hear how they word that? So instead of putting out the question that can Alberta economically survive if it went independent? No. Instead, she starts with a lie. The lie being that economists have said that if Alberta goes independent, it's not economically viable. That is a lie. 100% lie. Now, I did a previous episode. Check it out. I debunked this in Saskatchewan to the tune of over $67 billion in profit. We would see more just by removing every single piece of federal tax on all of our products. I didn't include what would happen once the federal government was removed. The increase in oil and gas production, the increase in uranium sales, the possibility of actually having the processing plant for uranium here, the increase in fertilizer, the increase in ag, and as well as all of the other companies around the world, especially data centers, which is huge business, big bucks, and Saskatchewan has the energy and the cold climate to do it. If you add that in, you're looking at hundreds of billions of dollars. So if Saskatchewan can do it and be more than successful, Alberta can do it without even blinking an eye. So again, it's how they word the question. But then they link it to how Danielle Smith is a separatist, which we're going to debunk a little bit further down in this episode. We'll get back to how she answers the question, or how she's forced to answer the question because the media is pushing a narrative. And Danielle Smith is way too smart to fall into that trap.
We, as I said, we support citizen-initiated referenda. The whole purpose is to have a process for citizens to be able to put those questions forward. I would say that would be a question for any of the groups that are leading that, because we aren't. We're leading the effort to have a strong and sovereign Alberta within a united Canada, and that will be what I would be advocating for.
But by lowering the threshold, you're leaving the door open, and you yourself acknowledged, talking on with Vashi Capellas last week, that you needed to provide an outlet, or else it could create a new party. So
now, this is something that CBC and CTV have been trying to push out. I don't have any respect for Vashi either. She's a weak, a lot of people give her credit because she's like one of the strongest media personalities. You call her a reporter on this propaganda media, but she's just weak, and some of the stuff she's done in the past really just proves it, especially here through the election, propping up the government and not asking serious questions or bringing proof to light like us independents have been doing for months. So once again, they're pushing that Danielle Smith is only doing this to try and stop another party from growing. They've taken it right out of context. She doesn't want her province to be run like how Quebec is ran. She wants to give the people the choice to remain like they are with 3 or 4 parties running, or leave Canada and then create a new government with 3 or 4 parties like they are. But instead, the media is twisting this, because Danielle Smith is correct. If this festers and she takes away this referendum, then the people will have to create a voice, and their voice will be a separatist party. This is logic. But again, propaganda media doing what it does best, and of course Danielle Smith, way too smart for her, for mainstream.
Therefore, I guess, are you worried about fractures within your own party as a result of this? We're seeing new groups, whether it's the Alberta Prosperity or the Republicans, saying that they're hearing a lot of support on this.
I think single issues should be put on a single question on a ballot if citizens want it to be. Our political party has dozens, if not hundreds, of policies. And so I don't intend for the United Conservative Party to become a single issue party. We intend to continue to support their founding documents, which that we are supporting constitutional sovereignty within United Canada. So once again, I think that those questions are for the various groups that are putting forward the referendum questions.
Thanks. Then we'll go to Jack, then we'll take...
Yeah, kind of crazy. Media's, these guys are...
If I'm not mistaken, like the escalating price was the point of carbon tax schemes, right? Like you're supposed to, with the escalating price, you incentivize businesses to invest in their own emissions reduction. Freezing the price kind of seems contrary to that, but it also kind of actually, in my head, breeds instability, because an indefinite freeze is something that will change, and they knew, the businesses knew when the price was escalating. So how is that stable?
I would say that the fact that the first action that Prime Minister Mark Carney took was to eliminate the retail carbon tax shows you that that price had gotten too high to bear. And I think that it's reasonable to expect that it's a parallel in the business community, that the price has gotten too high to bear. If you have a time frame of going out to 2050, there's no reason to try to front end load everything by 2030. That's been foundational to the dispute we're having with the federal government. Is let's coordinate around a 2050 target so that you can have a reasonable time frame to implement technology, develop new solutions, see the retirement of equipment. That's foundationally why we're having the dispute with Ottawa. The 170, could it have been possible if the Americans were following suit? I don't know. But you may have noticed there's a change of direction in the United States since November, which has caused a massive recalibration of everything in Canada. And if we want to be able to compete and integrate with our largest consumer, then we've got to have a reasonable level of increase. So as you've seen, we're not proposing it goes to zero. We're just proposing that it stays where it is. Well, we have some kind of recalibration about how this is going to impact the business community. What we have heard from the business community is that it's too high. And I think if you look at Quebec's carbon price, Quebec's carbon trading price is lower than this. And so that is also one of the reasons why we're frustrated with the federal approach, is that it doesn't apply equally to all of the provinces. That was absolutely true on the retail tax, and it's certainly true on the industrial pricing as well. So this, I hope, will prompt a conversation for us to get in sync with the federal government. That's what we've been asking to do ever since I talked to Mark Carney's predecessor, and I mentioned this in our first conversation. And it may be, as you go forward, that there's a tolerance to increase it, but I can tell you, I think that the business community has reached its limit. And why does it matter? We're competing for capital with the United States. Those dollars can flow anywhere. And if we get too far ahead of where the Americans are, then all of those billions of dollars of investment will not come here, and that will impact our economy.
So thanks.
Yeah. Now, this whole the carbon tax in general is just a farce, anyways. I'm going to show you now a open debate question and answers that happened between it happened in Bonnyville. I want to shoot a special thanks to Avril. It's called the Lavine Show. Again, this is a small independent. He hasn't got a lot of followers and subscribers. I think he's doing better than I am, to be honest, but still small nonetheless. This is why I try to always say like, share, and subscribe. And I don't do the greed thing. I don't try and take other people's clips. I actually do the homework, like I'll show you again here with Trump on the next episode, so that you can see everything in its full. And as well, by doing the homework, I'm showing you, and for myself, that is personal knowledge. That I'm not just jumping on some bandwagon and like posting all of these little wee clips that everybody else is showing. I do a line of fact checking. There's a whole process making these little episodes between a half hour and an hour long. It takes hours upon hours upon hours. Sometimes it takes days and weeks. And on a few of the breaking that I've done in the past, especially the 3-part series that I did, this is months of work that goes into it. So this is why I always post all of the links so that you guys can go and see that I'm not just clipping or editing certain things out of there, because I want you to understand that I'm here just to give you the facts. Just the facts, sorry. So I'm going to give a shout out to the Lavine Show. If you can, and if you want, which I ask you to watch the entire episode he put out recording this. It was a special evening with UCP leader Danielle Smith, Alberta Prosperity Project CEO Mitch Sylvester, and Bonnyville Cold Lake St. Paul MLA Scott Sear to hear about keeping Alberta strong. Now, kudos to him for recording it and putting it out there and being there. And while I'm on this, I've been actually contemplating creating another channel. We're doing just news, the news, the weather, and everything, and actually start a small news outlet within the separatist movement, covering only those areas that would be part of leaving Canada. Now, I obviously haven't come up with the name yet, and I've been trying this here for the last couple of weeks, kind of just working everything out, going through the legalities, especially when dealing with having to deal with the weather. Sports is a hard one. Again, there's a big monopoly on that. Everything's big business, so there's a lot of legalities that I have to double check and go through. I've got the weather thing all figured out now, so that's good news. But I am going to need you guys, my subscribers and my viewers, to be part of it. So I'm going to throw a want out there, a want ad. And this is it right here. If you are in Edmonton, Calgary, Northern BC, of course, Saskatchewan, I don't know if I'm going to cover Manitoba. Very weak showing for the independent movement, especially with the whole NDP. That it's a major stronghold there. They're kind of a socialist. I don't think they're ready yet. I think once they see how successful the rest of us can be in a few years, they may finally start voting in a more democratic party, maybe even create new parties and join the club. But anyways, this is the idea I'm moving forward on. You can always reach me. My email address is in the page description, CanadianCitizenJournal@gmail.com. If you are interested, if you're not afraid to either put yourself on camera or at least be able to go out and record pressers with Mo's going to be talking outside of Regina or Saskatoon, or what's going on and everywhere from Melfort, Yorkton, Estevan, anywhere. I need all the help I can get. So depending on the amount of people that I can bring together, we'll see if this can actually flourish. But until then, I got lots of work to do. So make sure you like, share, and subscribe, get the word out, and just ask people around if they're interested in doing it. Nowadays, you can do wonders with the cell phone. So of course, I'm sorry, there will be no money in it until we get enough subscribers and people watching. And then obviously we will be paying as much as we possibly can to try and help everybody else out that's helping this channel. Now, moving on to Premier Danielle Smith. This is a absolutely fabulous, absolutely fabulous forum. Once again, a shout out to Lavine. Here we go. Let's dive in.
So I want to share with everybody in the room that we can trigger a referendum today with the support that we have. The polls are suggesting that up to 44% of Albertans support separation. If that's the case, Premier, what percentage do you think of that would be UCP?
There is a poll out by, I think, Angus Reid today. I haven't had a chance to look at it in detail. It has it a little bit lower, still higher than they were expected. It was about 36%. And I think it's, 50-50 when it comes down to UCP voters, quite a bit lower when it comes to NDP voters. But that's, I think, it wouldn't surprise me in this room if we saw that same kind of split, that there's about a third of people who are ready to go today, a third of people who, well, it doesn't matter what the Ottawa will do, they want to stay part of Canada, and a third that are open to being convinced based on whether or not we see action one way or the other. And so we're just trying to have that conversation. I think it's an important one to have. I fully appreciate why people are fed up after 10 years of being treated the way that we have, knowing especially it's almost all the same cabinet ministers who made these same terrible policies who are still there. I do understand that can be the case. However, I also know that leadership can change direction. I don't know if this particular leader will change direction, but we're going to find out pretty soon.
Well, we're going to find out pretty soon, because I think you're going to have more leverage than you would have ever had before, because we can actually trigger the referendum for independence. So I think that they're going to come to the table understanding that there's a big threat here. And I really believe it's a legitimate threat. From the conversation I've had with everybody out there, I think this is a legitimate threat. Your thoughts on that?
If I may, you're right. I think here's the thing. You were telling me you were going to hire a pollster to do some polling on this. I don't think you're going to need to. Everybody is polling on this issue right now because they're seeing that you've got a certain number of signatures on your website. So they're wanting to know what's going on here. And so there was another pollster.
And by the way, I will post in the description a link to the APP. So if you are in Alberta and you are interested in joining the movement, it will be right there in the links. Click on them. This is a great organization. They are extremely organized. They are not necessarily a political party. They are just an organization who I beg everybody in Alberta who's all part of these little wee group, these movements that are kind of fighting for their own, all of you need to be part of the APP. Once you guys all come together and then the true numbers are there, you will be that much better off in having a successful referendum and using each other to get the word out about certain times that we're going to have petitions and other things. It's crucial for these groups to come together in order for the movement to move forward. Once the independence is signed and put in and the motion starts to roll, then you guys can go about your business and fight upon each other on who's going to run this party and that party and all the rest of it, and divide everything that you want to do for power. But do whatever you want. But I just suggest to everybody, I beg everybody, try to join the central movement so that all of the numbers are there together. Together you will succeed. Divided you will fall. We're going to let her continue.
Who asked about the threat and how concerned people were about this separatist threat in Alberta versus Quebec, and 52% took it seriously when it came to Alberta, and 42% took it seriously when it came to Quebec. And so that gives you some idea about how nervous everyone are, that the federal government may have just pushed things a little bit too far. That's why people are talking about it. That's why they're worried about it, is that they finally feel like that Albertans may have had enough, and they're worried about it. Their reaction, of course, is to call out anybody who feels that way. The reaction is to, like they are trying to do in Saskatchewan, trying to put legislation in place saying, you cannot hold this vote. My view is a little bit differently.
She's correct, which I'm going to show in the next episode. The NDP in Saskatchewan, I tell you, their true socialist fascist colors are coming through. Again, I'll deal with that on the next episode. I'm going to have that produced in about an hour or so after this one here gets off to air.
Is that if it is the case that many Albertans want to have the conversation, then if the signatures can be achieved, then we should have the conversation.
Now, fabulous. This again, thank you to Lavine for putting this out there.
It's been brutal, and you're right. I mean, for those of you who remember the first Trudeau and the National Energy Program, I do, because my dad was in the industry.
I sure do.
You know the thing about him, though? He wanted to steal our wealth. He didn't want to destroy it. That's the difference. He wanted us to keep on producing our resources. He just wanted to take more of it. His son wanted to destroy our resources, and you can tell from all the things that they did. From canceling the Northern Gateway, which was the most important pipeline for us to build, and then doubling up by putting a tanker ban off the West Coast, bringing through net zero power regulations, net zero cars, emissions cap. I could go on and on. I was trying to describe to the media about why it is. Here's what I tried to tell the media is that they were saying, don't you understand the existential threat that Donald Trump poses to our economy? I said, take a little bit of that anger and fear you have and understand that's how Albertans feel about Ottawa. We feel that Ottawa is the existential threat to Alberta. And I've been trying to, I don't know if I'm communicating it well enough, but I'm trying to paint the pathway that exists for us if we cannot get these federal laws repealed. An emissions cap with a net zero power grid cap that has such aggressive targets we have to achieve them by 2030 or 2035, which is what they have on the books right now, would require us to curtail our oil and gas production by 2 million barrels a day. So we currently produce 4.3 million barrels per day. So they are then going to ask me over the next 5 years to go to CNRL and Suncor and Cenovus and say, how are we going to start winding down your industry? And that is what losing 2 million barrels a day looks like. It means shutting down SAGD production, shutting down oil sands production. It means losing half of not only our GDP that is provided by oil and gas, but half of the revenues that are provided by oil and gas. It means we have to find a way to make our budget work without $7 billion worth of resource revenue, which means that this entire program I was talking about for building schools gets wiped out. A third of our budget for healthcare every year gets wiped out. That is the consequences if we do not cause them to turn course. That's one part.
Now, this is what I also talked about in that previous episode with Saskatchewan. This is one of those things where, like I was saying, if a person actually put in full context how the federal government has stunted and stopped Saskatchewan production, especially with Bill C-69, this is what's going on. The economy in Saskatchewan would be so much better over the last decades without all of this manipulation and well, personally, it's an attack. It's an attack to just try and shut down any growth or prosperity on anybody who deals in the resource industry. This is what she's getting at. And especially in Alberta, because they are the largest exporter of oil and gas in Canada. So what she's saying is absolutely true, and this is what the media is all mumbles and refuses to talk about. They've stifled the West. They have crippled. They have taxed us to such an extreme. We're picking between heat and eat, and they have just completely crushed the economies that we should have today.
The other part is if we can't continue building electricity, then we'll be like Quebec, where a company will come and say, hey, I want to do business in your province, and we'll say, sorry, we have a list of businesses that are allowed to operate because we're constrained on power, so we have to say no. That's what they're doing in Quebec right now. They're triaging industrial developments because they don't have enough power. That is not the Alberta way. That is not the Alberta culture. That's not who we are. We are not a nation. Ooh. We are not a jurisdiction.
She let it slip. Our nation. Too funny.
Look what you've done, Mitch. We're not a jurisdiction.
I'm with you there.
That is winding things down. We are a jurisdiction that is winding things up, and that is the foundational problem. Is that I think the East thinks that they can just keep on piling these things on, and we'll just keep doing what we're doing. Well, we're not going to be able to. They are such punitive regulations that they have. There would be no choice but to wind things down. We can't do that. We've already seen it. They keep talking about how they built a pipeline. Yes, a pipeline got built, but they had to build it because they created so much private sector uncertainty that no business in their right mind would go into trying to build a pipeline on their own. They built it at 5 times the cost the private sector would have built it for. And we won't get any more pipelines built again unless they can change that investment climate. We've lost at least, we calculate, $175 billion worth of investment and probably more. And that has a massive impact on the lives and livelihoods of everyday citizens. So that's a bit of a quantification about the impact that they've had. And that, I think, is very clear why Albertans have had enough.
Yeah, and don't forget, not only did they only build the one pipeline with your tax dollars, they allowed investors like Brookfield to become part of it. This is shit that, pardon my French, this is stuff that mainstream hides from the people. So your tax dollars are helping Carney and his cronies make billions of dollars. Yes, off of your tax dollars in the same route, while stifling and stagnating any other progress that could happen out of these provinces. I'm going to skip ahead a little wee bit further here. I urge you to watch the entire thing. It is awesome.
Not only are they killing our industry, they're taxing the hell out of us. And so they're double dipping. So they're coming at us from two directions.
Now I love this because this shows you, this is what I was finding. This is what I was finding when I did when I was just showing the proof of how powerful Saskatchewan would be. My calculations, and like I showed in that episode, I was being conservative. I believe I was somewhere around like, I was about 3 to 8% less than what the government actually put out while I was tabulating this up. So I knew I was on the right path, and I knew I was giving you a very conservative idea. I wasn't blowing things out of proportion. If anything, I was giving you a lesser amount because I didn't want to give fake news. I'm not that guy. I'm not mainstream. I'm not one of these people out there who produce these channels, for clicks and likes. I do this because I want people to get the truth, get all the information. Now listen to what he says, because this is what I spoke of on my previous episode, where I came up with the $67.5 billion, and I didn't even finish. I could have chased it further on just federal tax and how they do double dip. They tax on tax. They don't give you an individual tax like how they were doing the carbon tax. They don't say, okay, you buy $100 in fuel, so you're going to get X amount of tax for the carbon. And then you're going to get X amount of tax on whatever, HST. And then you're going to get X amount of tax on the... Instead, what they do is they tax you first, then that gets added on, which gives it an increased amount. Then they add the next tax on top of that. And then on top of that, it is outright theft. Listen to what he says. I watched this part. I started laughing because, yes, thank you very much for showing I was absolutely correct again.
I'm just going to read you a list of the taxes that we pay to the federal government. Just in case you're interested. Carbon tax, personal tax, corporate tax, GST, excise tax, alcohol tax, cannabis tobacco tax, excise duties, customs duties, air traveler tax, capital gains, land transfer tax, regulation tax, CPP tax, business tax. Think that's a little bit unreasonable?
And he's not naming them all. He's not naming them all.
We're taxed to the neighborhood of 45 to 60%, depending on who you are. So just understand, and I'm going to plug an independent Alberta here for a minute, take all those taxes off the table and understand how much money you could save. You could probably save about 20 or 30% on your paycheck instantly.
Instantly. And he did the same thing I did. He lowered it down because there are certain taxes that once the transition starts and you actually start to become independent, you're going to need to float in order to get organized, in order to start creating bills, in order to, obviously it is going to cost. Creating your own currency, everybody's like, oh, creating a currency, that right there says it's, there's no way economically they can do it. BS. That's the cheapest thing to do. The big ones are the creating your own pension plan and trying to market it in as your economy gets cut from the federal government. Once your industry start to grow, is putting an organization together that can actually start to create a pension plan, investing it within your own new independent nation. This costs money. This takes lots of, there's a pile of economic research that has to go into it, as well as the independent police force, which, thank God, Alberta and Saskatchewan are en route to do. And she's going to dabble on that here in a little wee bit. I'm going to post a clip about how she mentions this. These are things that has to be done. You have to cut yourself off before you can even get a referendum going to leave. You need to cut the federal government off all of its services. Cops gotta go. The RCs, they gotta go. We've seen what the power that the federal government has in manipulating our provinces, especially with what they did to the Freedom Convoy. Absolutely just an embarrassment. Total abuse of power. And again, top down, Ottawa down. The people here, they did not like it. The vast majority of Westerners were really choked about how the RCMP were dealing with this. In fact, it was an embarrassment. They got to go. RC's got to go. So right there, that money, you need to be able to remove them and put them in, and then slowly, now once you say I'm independent, now you're going to have to take the entire cost of all of that and increase it so you have a better system, which I was working out. We could have twice the system. More helicopters, way more planes, better federal, get rid of the federal penitentiaries and have our own. We'd have to take that over as well. We could have such a superior system for a lot less. But it takes studies, it takes time. So like he did, he didn't just say you'd reduce that 40% off the hop, 20 to 30. You got to be conservative on how you're dealing with it, because then as time goes on and your new country becomes successful, you can then completely start reducing your taxes right down. So kudos, this guy, he knows what he's talking about. Let's get back to it.
So let's move on.
Yeah, priceless. Absolutely priceless.
So if I may, I'm going to share with you a quote from Mr. Carney's Book of Values. And he said, Western society is morally rotten, and that it has been corrupted by capitalism, which brought about a climate emergency. This, he claims, requires rigid controls on personal freedoms, industry, and corporate funding. Assets will be stranded, used gasoline cars will be unsaleable, inefficient properties will be unrentable. He promises socialism.
That's what he does. That's right out of his book. He does. He promises socialism. That's what he's after. That's his whole intent.
I want to ask you a question, Premier. How do you believe you will be able to negotiate in good faith with Mr. Carney?
It's a good question, right? I mean, I've said I don't know what Mark Carney is Prime Minister. Is it the Mark Carney who was a Bank of Canada governor for one of our most prominent Conservative Prime Ministers, Stephen Harper, was also a Bank of England governor for a Conservative government at the time. So he spent a lot of years as a banker to Conservative governments. He was sort of a pragmatic, trustworthy person. But then when he left that, he went completely in the opposite direction. He started up this Glasgow net zero financing group.
Now that Glasgow, by the way, is that's the one, the GFANS is the one that's under investigation in the United States, which we're going to see how this plays out now with the new Trump administration. As I exposed on my previous episode, Carney loves the fact, and this is why he wanted the Liberals in power, is because he's all for America. He does not care about Canada. These Canadians out there that think that, oh, Trump is great, he's going to help us out. No, he's not. He's going to want to shut in our oil, so he's going to want to buy it at the cheapest price. He's going to want to do exactly what Tides and Sierra and all the rest of these clubs have been doing. He's all about the states. He wants to open up ANSWR. This is the huge find in Alaska. He's all about America. So for all of those people who think Trump is out, he's going to help out Canada as well. He's not. And the proof is in the pudding on how his meeting with Carney went. And like I said, I'm going to show you on the next episode how he talks about Carney and these new trade issues that are going to start coming out. He wants the Green Revolution to continue. This fake religious zealotism to continue in Canada, because it only benefits the states.
and then was going around the world trying to get pension funds to invest in green initiatives at the same time as he was lobbying banks and insurance companies not to give money to traditional oil and gas investment or to de-insure those types of investments. So which Mark Carney is it? Is it the pragmatic banker, or is it the green extremist? I don't know. I really don't know. It could well be that we are now finally at a point where Canadians have had enough. That's what I'm seeing among the premiers. The premiers, doesn't matter how large their province or how small, what their endowment of natural resources are, whether they're socialist or independent or liberal or conservative. Every one of us have projects that we want to develop to generate revenue, to create jobs, and to be able to find new markets. And so it could be that he's become prime minister at a time in our history where Canadians have made a collective decision to go in a different direction. And if he's pragmatic and smart, he will follow along with that direction. But he has a very short window here, and I've told him that. I said, we've been told a lot of things for 2.5 years from the previous government. We tried to find some common ground to move forward, and they would not budge. In fact, every time we pushed, it's like they doubled down and did something worse. And so I think he's got a narrow window here.
Now, I disagree with what she's saying. I think this is called high hopes. Like I said in my previous episode, he's going to try and fool Canadians. He's going to try and make it seem as though he's trying to help the West when he actually isn't. You watch, it's coming. It's coming. He will try to say, I'm going to try and get this pipeline built. I'm going to try and help Saskatchewan and Alberta and blah, blah, blah. And it's all going to be verbal diarrhea. And sure, it'll look like he's doing it, but he's going to allow the green activism, this religious carbon nastiness, fake belief, to quash it. And it will come. It will come. I guarantee you, because this man he's evil.
So my answer to you is, how much does he have to give us, and how long a window does he actually have?
I think 6 months. I think that's the most, really. Like it's. And how much does he have to give us? Well, I think it's a down payment on an ongoing conversation, because I'll tell you the things that we put on the table. First of all, we have to be able to get an economic corridor. Our most important economic corridor is going to be to Port of Prince Rupert. We already export propane from there. There's already a pad for LNG. It was a perfect place as well for a bitumen pipeline to end. And it's direct line of sight to the Asian markets, which are only 8 to 10 days away. We have a huge advantage over the Americans in being able to develop that port out. Plus, it's also a rail line that allows us to export anything we could possibly desire, whether it's our wood products or our agriculture products or any of our other products that we want to export internationally, critical minerals and others. So I think that corridor is the most important for us. I'd love to see a corridor up north so that we could start building out Arctic security installations as well and help our friends in Nunavut, Northwest Territories develop their critical minerals. I know Manitoba's talking about building out Churchill. We could build out that way as well. That could be another way for us to get through Hudson Bay and go over.
She goes on and on and on about this. Like I urge you, support Lavine. Click on the link below. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe on his channel as well as mine. We need independent media to get out. He went out of his way to go there and film this so that everybody could actually see it in its full. And like I said, he did a great job. He got the whole thing, and it is fabulous. It is a must watch. Now, this is a very important discussion that needs to happen. I'll just play it out and listen carefully.
But there's a big error, as far as I'm concerned, in the right to bear arms. What we see, and I had a lawyer write this up for me, so I don't think it's necessary that I read it, but I'll just explain it to you. The right to bear arms, the Bill of Rights to include the right to acquire, keep, and use firearms in accordance to the law is what's in our Bill of Rights today. In accordance to the law is a big problem. We would like that changed. We were told that this is a living document and we'd like to have it changed. We would prefer to have it basically in accordance to the law of Alberta. And I'm asking you if you would consider an amendment to that to change it so that we can protect ourselves from these people, because Carney has actually told us he's coming for our guns.
He has, it's true. I thought it was assumed it would be in accordance to the law of Alberta, but I can see why you think that might not be as clear. The intention behind it was to recognize that there is some limitation on the right to own firearms. In the U.S., their Second Amendment was initially interpreted to be that you had the right to bear arms for the purpose of having a well-armed militia. So it was quite narrow when it was first interpreted. It got reinterpreted, I think, around 2008 to be much more broad in its interpretation, but still acknowledged that there were some limitations, like if you perpetrated domestic violence or...
Now, if you actually talk to real scholars down in the States, there are some very good ones out there. They have pretty much they stated, shown, and proven that it was not just for militia. They like to say militia like in support of government. That's not what it was for. It was in case the government became tyrannical. That was the main reason. It was in order to make sure that the people had the ability to stop a tyrannical government from taking power and then taking away rights. So she's a little bit off on how she's wording this. But again, Danielle Smith, she's being political. She has to watch how she says things because the media would just love to clip her and blow it out of context.
You have a mental disorder, or you've used it for criminal use. There is, or you want to buy a tank or a bazooka. There are certain things that they recognize, even in the United States, is a limitation on that right. But we want to make sure that the language that we used was important because we wanted to make sure people could acquire, which means you still have the right to buy, keep, which means they cannot take it from you, and use, meaning it's not enough to say, yeah, you can hold it, but you can't take it to a gun range and you can't transport it. That takes away all the meaningful use of your firearm if you don't have those three rights. So that's why we thought it was important for us to enshrine those in particular. There is one additional law paper. I should probably give it to your lawyer to see what they would think of this. I was looking this up to try to figure out how, knowing that Carney still wants to go after law-abiding gun owners. Well, I wondered if there was anything that we could do provincially. And I found this 2018 paper that was written that said that we as a province have the right to choose not to enforce certain criminal code provisions. That they said that the check on the use of the criminal law power at the federal level and the abuse of the criminal law power at the federal level is that the provinces can always say we're not enforcing that, and that is a legitimate exercise of our right over administration of justice. Now, I don't know if that was just a fringe opinion of the legal community, or if that is an accepted view in the legal community. But I've put that to our Justice Department, and I've put that to Mike Ellis, because we do not believe that is the priority of law enforcement. The priority of law enforcement is to go after the guys who are selling fentanyl and cooking up fentanyl, going after the guys who are engaging in violent criminal activity, the ones who are going onto your properties and stealing your equipment. Those are the people that we want to go after. We do not want to go after law-abiding gun owners. And so if we can give, truly, if we have the power to be able to say, here are our policing priorities, and it's not that, then I think that might go a measure towards protecting and creating a bit of a different environment here. That being said, we are encouraging municipalities, and I would encourage all of you to encourage your municipalities. We have to have police forces that are under our jurisdiction.
Now, this is something I have been trying to get the word out. Now, Mo has already done this. He's started his marshal service. 6 or 7 or so have already been out. I can't remember. I saw on a previous episode. I kind of have that on a back file right now, as well as what she was saying about militias. I've been reading a lot of the original Constitution and the changes and amendments that have been made through time on the right to bear arms, how militias can form, if they can be provincial, if they're only federal. There's a lot of legalese involved into it. but listen to her reaffirm this is what I have been trying to say. If you are in Saskatchewan or Alberta, make sure you petition your representative. Call, email, start petitions up expressing how you want your own private provincial marshal service. The faster you can get the RCMP out of your province, that is the second strong arm. Next to propaganda, it's the RCMP. They have to go. You have to remove them. The only way to do it is by pressure. So join either Mo's party or Danielle's party so you have a voice. Petition all of your MLAs, all of your voices, federally as well. Like, voice it out there, and you tell them you want them gone. You want your tax dollars to be taken away from the federal government. That percentage that is spent off how you're taxed and given to the province so that they can build their own policing service. This is crucial. This is like the first big step needed in order to succeed, in order to become independent.
We are encouraging municipalities, and I would encourage all of you to encourage your municipalities. We have to have police forces that are under our jurisdiction, and that
Hear,
is
hear.
that is
Hear, hear.
that is why we are creating a provincial policing authority for our sheriffs, and we have many of our sheriffs that are now trained up to that level. We are prepared to create detachments of sheriffs into communities as an alternative. We are encouraging municipalities to look at whether they want to establish their own municipal police force, as they did in Grand Prairie, or have a regional policing force, if that makes sense, to have a number of communities come together. But I think that's going to be essential in making sure that we have some control over establishing our policing priorities, is that we've got to have those law enforcement respond to us as opposed to their bosses in Ottawa. I would just put that to you. I know it's a little controversial when we start talking about the options for policing, but I think that's going to be one of the keys to make sure that we don't have a misapplication of those policing resources.
Which has already come out. There has been, it sounds like Manitoba, of course, Wab Canoe, the weak man. The full-fledged socialist Wab Canoe has, from what I've been reading so far, has put it through that they're going to allow the RCMP to start going into people's lives and taking and searching for firearms. This is a disgusting abuse of power, and for you Manitobans that watch, I urge you, you better start making some calls, you better start making some noise, and get this abolished. Because this is completely undemocratic. Total abuse of federal power. Now I'm going to scroll ahead to at the end. This pretty much nails where she stands and debunks the whole idea that she is a full-fledged separatist. Let's hear what she has to say.
I'm going to leave you with one final thing. I'm going to leave you with the question.
So this is the question that they came up with, APP, that they want on the referendum.
Do you agree that the province of Alberta shall become a sovereign country and cease to be a province of Canada? Yes or no? Do you homework? You can answer that.
Do you believe that we can negotiate a better deal with Ottawa and still be hold on, you got the yeses on his. I'm looking for yeses. How many of you believe that we can negotiate a new deal with that? I'm looking for the yeses for a strong and sovereign Alberta within a united Canada. I got a few. I'll take it where I can. I'm going to try, guys. I think I owe it to you to give it a try. So we'll be, as I said, this is our third annual. I know I'm coming back for another year, and boy, a lot can change in that time. But thank you so much for everything you do to support.
So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. She is definitely fighting for an independent, sovereign province within Canada. She's just allowing the people the right to have their voices heard through this referendum, which, of course, is going to help the people have their voices heard through a referendum of secession. So democracy has to live, it has to thrive in order for it to prevail. So kudos out to her. Again, I want to thank the Lavine Show for doing incredible work. I haven't really gone through and looked at a lot of his different stuff in his interviews yet. I just know that I did a couple quick clicks and went through and was reading just some of the kind of the titles and stuff and some of the descriptions. It seems like this guy is on the ball. He's definitely doing his homework. He does a lot of interviews, and that is an incredibly hard thing to do, not only to get hosts, but in order to be able to read up on a lot of the knowledge, to ask and have the ability to put forward a debate with somebody live. So kudos out. His link will be below. Make sure you watch this in its entirety. Like I said, it is fabulous, and hopefully you like, share, and subscribe, not only to my channel, but to Lavine as well, because us small independents need all the help we can get. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you are subscribed, make sure you punch that notification bell so you don't miss any future episodes. Until the next time, you've been watching the Canadian Citizen Journal. I'm your host, Alias Tagai. Stay informed.